I am what you might call a self-proclaimed rock band addict. While others may use first-person shooters and fighting games to relieve stress and unwind, I prefer playing along with some of my favorite music. It's relaxing, and there's just something about hearing an entire audience cheer for you that just puts a smile on my face. So, as you can imagine, I was sad when Harmonix ended their support of Rock Band 4 after 8 years. What are the fans to do? Well, if you love rhythm games and are into adventuring, then let me recommend Rift of the NecroDancer, the brand new release from Brace Yourself Games. With great music, ghoulish enemies, and a beat so infectious that it will raise the dead, this will certainly scratch that Rock Band itch. So grab your dancing shoes and get ready to kick some undead ass, because this is my review of Rift of the NecroDancer. When Crypt of the NecroDancer was released back in 2014, critics fell in love with the game's unique take on the role-playing genre. By mixing rhythm gameplay and dungeon crawling, the game sat somewhere between Guitar Hero and The Legend of Zelda. Perhaps fitting then that the game proved to be so successful that the developers actually teamed up with Nintendo to create a version based on Link's many adventures in Hyrule. Now, a full decade later, Brace Yourself Games is back with a vastly different sequel that picks up where the story left off. In what may prove to be a divisive decision, the music-driven dungeons have been replaced with a more traditional rhythm game format, skewing this sequel a whole lot closer to Guitar Hero than The Legend of Zelda. This is a faster and more exciting game that isn't afraid to shake up the formula in some radical ways. And I have a hunch that a lot of your enjoyment's going to come from just how much you like battling ghouls and ghosts on a note highway. There's a story here that tries to explain what's happening. We pick up with Cadence in a different dimension, doing her best to figure out where she is and how to get back home. Thankfully, some of her friends have found rifts into the strange new dimension, but there's a catch. In order for her to solve this problem, Cadence will need to help her friends and maybe, just maybe, even do the unthinkable. That's right, team up with the NecroDancer. The horror! As a rhythm game, Rift of the NecroDancer takes a lot of inspiration from games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band. We get a note highway with 3 lanes, each triggered by a different button. Instead of hitting the equivalent of a note, we're fighting off blobs, skeletons, gargoyles, zombies, dragons, and all kinds of other scary creatures. Equipped with only 10 hit points, Cadence battles the hordes of enemies until she either succumbs to the monster invasion, or she kills every last one of them. What makes this game so challenging is that every enemy has something unique that factors into defeating them. For example, the blobs are basically just a typical note, though you will need to watch out for blue and orange blobs because you'll need to hit those multiple times to defeat them. The bat, on the other hand, will fly either left or right when you hit them, while a dragon will require you to hold the button down throughout the entire duration of its tail. Other enemies might include skeletons, which might lose their head and stumble backwards, or even monsters that'll rush the player at the very last second. Look, individually, all of these enemies are easy to take out, but the game becomes challenging when you're batting away a whole bunch of these creatures all at once. Now, you could argue that Rift of the NecroDancer is just Guitar Hero with more types of notes to memorize, and you wouldn't be wrong. Compared to the rhythm games we're used to, there's actually a lot going on in this game. I'm not gonna lie, this game actually humbled me. Yeah, I went in cocky and feeling like I could rock any note highway, but boy was I wrong. I couldn't just crank it up to the hardest difficulty and expect a full combo every song. I actually had to learn and memorize not only how each monster acted, but also how to deal with the different colored bad guys. That forced me to be more engaged with the action on screen, and sometimes even changing the way I think about rhythm games. The game does a good job of shaking up the genre. While there's no dungeon crawling like in the original, the sequel does come with a more streamlined story that helps to explain who the characters are and why there are monsters bursting through these rifts. This is a great example of the developers having a lot of fun taking the concept in some just absurd directions. The story mode is where you'll run into the various mini-games, which will have you doing everything from working at a fast food restaurant to taking fashion photographs in the park. There are also a number of boss battles, which once again shake up the gameplay. Look, it isn't much, but it does break up the Rift levels and adds a lot of humor to the game. There really is so much to love about Cadence, as well as the entire cast of colorful characters. Of course, the reason this game works so well is because the music is so good. This is always the most important part of a rhythm game, and this type of smaller release is always at a disadvantage due to largely relying on music that nobody's ever heard before. While that's certainly the case with Rift of the NecroDancer, I didn't find it to be a problem. The 30 or so tracks populating the soundtrack are both catchy and wonderfully varied. It's a lot of music that's inspired by other adventure games, and there are definitely a few tracks that I couldn't get out of my head, even after only a couple of playings. And even if you do grow tired of hearing the same songs over and over, Rift of the NecroDancer has you covered. This is a rhythm game that actually allows players to create their own Rift levels, giving us all kinds of tracks to download and play, all for free. And there's more than just user-created tracks, the game also has its own downloadable content. While playing through Rift of the NecroDancer for review, the developers dropped a free 3-pack full of music from Super Meat Boy. If they can continue to update the game with familiar tunes from other popular games, then this sequel could really be onto something big. Between the DLC and the user-created content, I honestly can't wait to see where this game is a year or two from now. From a visual perspective, I like this game a lot more than the original. Yes, the pixel graphics and the rudimentary dungeons were charming, but I just love how much personality that they've given to every one of the characters. Cadence's enthusiasm while bopping to the music is infectious, and I love how expressive the enemies are, especially when you have to smack them around a couple of times. This really is a good-looking game. Alright, look, maybe it's because I'm already a big fan of games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, but I have to say that this sequel appealed to me a lot more than the original Crypt of the NecroDancer. That said, I can't imagine there being a chunk of the audience that actually prefers the originality and the uniqueness of that first game. But even if you are disappointed by how closely the game sticks to the rhythm game conventions, it still does a whole lot to mix up the genre. Having so many different monsters to deal with and memorize really does add a new component to the action, and it makes the game considerably more challenging. Don't think that just because you're a hero on a fake plastic guitar that you're going to be able to shred your way through Rift of the NecroDancer, because there's a lot to learn and memorize, even on the medium and hard difficulties. Look, after so many years of playing rhythm games, it takes a lot to impress me, and I have to admit that Rift of the NecroDancer wowed me the whole way through. It's in the catchy music, the hilarious visuals, the compelling story, the silly mini-games, and the action-packed gameplay. Although it looks a lot like other music games, this adventure-themed sequel brings a lot of fresh and fun ideas to the genre. This is a strong follow-up that's going to keep me rocking out for a long time to come. Rift of the NecroDancer is an intoxicating blend of role-playing and rhythm gaming, giving fans of both genres a unique experience full of memorable characters and comical adventuring. With dozens of enemy types and variations, players will have a lot to memorize and deal with on the Note Highway, giving even the biggest Guitar Hero or Rock Band fans a new challenge to overcome. Best of all, the music is phenomenal. Throw in some hilarious mini-games, a couple of boss fights, and even user-created content, and what you have is an amazing adventure game that completely shakes up the rhythm genre in a lot of fun ways. Rock on, NecroDancer! Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite type of rhythm game? Look, you know me. I'm partial to the Note Highway thing that we get in, Rock Band and Guitar Hero. But you know what? There are all kinds of other types of rhythm games. So I'm honestly excited to see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back later this week with some drama. That's right, we're going into the gutter. We're going to be looking at magazines that attacked other magazines. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,